Please listen carefully.
There we go. Hi, my name is Clark. I'm from North Carolina. I'm a conceptual artist and contemporary artist. I grew up in Concord, North Carolina, and I just wanted to share my experience over the last 20, 30 years about making the type of art I do in the South. So we'll start the slides. I grew up in a ranch house that was not conventional compared to most people in my neighborhood. My mom, she liked modern stuff where everyone else kind of liked country things. So, there's ashtrays hanging from the ceiling, and that's me in the background holding that weird ukulele. She got her art degree through a correspondence course in the 50s. Schools back then, art schools were either in Florida or New York, so she actually drew the pirate and the turtle and would send in her assignments and ended up doing illustration for Belk stores and then eventually got into packaging, which the same company that she worked for makes boxes for our project, so I'm sort of in packaging. But a lot of the art supplies that I had growing up were graphic design supplies that were not really safe for kids. Like ruling pens and X-Acto knives and markers that would kind of get you a little lightheaded. In kindergarten, I kind of fell victim to this shakedown where they pulled me off the playground and they wanted a Valentine's thing for the newspaper, and it was just a setup. I got beat up for that by the kids in the neighborhood afterwards. Went to high school, played football, and actually made the banners that we would bust out of. So I kind of, in hindsight, view that as my first conceptual art of it just being the idea, not about permanence. And there it is, senior superlatives. Went to college, started wearing thrift clothes, started listening to darker music like The Cure and things like The Smiths. Got away from the metalhead stuff. But this was a time where, I started to realize there were more to things than just my little town in North Carolina. My mom, at that point, she had clients in the Empire State Building. She worked for a packaging company that dealt with a lot of hosiery clients, and a lot of her clients, or some of them, were just some old guy with a receptionist in the Empire State Building. It's like what you would see on Bugs Bunny or something, just real archaic. But they were really nice, and they would pretty much just broker all the ideas. And sometimes when she it's a small company, so she didn't want to travel by herself. She was nervous, so she would take me along. So I got to experience things that right around late high school and college that is real different for me. Some of those things were art pieces in museums. I kind of got hooked on Robert Rauschenberg because he would use things that looked like things in our family's basement. I was a pack rat, so I really connected with that sort of work. And then since I went to school in Appalachian in the mountains, I kind of got into like earthy stuff, and I liked Robert Smithson. And actually met Keith Haring when he was at the Pop Shop back before he passed away in 1988 or something. And I think this is Heisel. He would do earthworks, like do donuts with a motorcycle out in the desert and take pictures. So after college, me and two buddies opened a gallery in a bombed out area of Charlotte, North Davison Street. We were doing stuff that it was all experimental. It was real shoddy at times, but we were having a blast. Soon afterwards, the neighborhood had an acronym called NODA. So it was just plywood when the whole street was covered in plywood. All the windows were boarded in. It was kind of frightening. But when you're 24, you don't really think about that. So we were filling the gallery full of sand, doing political work about anti-war and things of that nature. Once it got the acronym, we got muscled out because all the real estate people started paying attention. So if any of you are artists out there and you rent from a building that was looks like it might blow up and get popular, I would suggest buying property because you probably have a better retirement by doing that. But I was doing things like this. I was into Polaroid photography, the kind that you would peel apart, the bellowed cameras, and I would take pictures all day just around the neighborhood, and I called this, and I would frame things relative to the content of the photograph. So this is a frame of shame. Framed is a vacuum cleaner that I liked, a 50s vacuum cleaner, and I framed it with dirt and items from the bag. Obviously, this would never sell, but I made a lot of them, and it kind of led to the idea-based stuff that I do. A lot of those pieces ended up in dumpsters, so I actually had the idea of having a mobile gallery where I would rent a dumpster, finish it with sheetrock, and have lighting and things, and just plop it in a public place. And you see the back wall would have like a lenticular type painting where you stick your head in one door, you see one painting, stick your head in the other side, you see a different one. Again, nothing would sell. But this was around the time when our Senator Jesse Helms was targeting the NEA. Serrano and Mapplethorpe were the reasons he kind of targeted artists. And he did a good job of sort of vilifying artists and making them appear as social deviants and sponges on tax dollars. I never received a grant because of this, and I'm proud of that. So I just wanted to do my own thing. And, at the time, which is kind of similar to, this is the wrong, I think I edited it a little bit, but I got rid of that one. But you see, that's the type of work he was trying to disband the NEA about. So he had a point that if you take money from someone, then you pretty much have to answer to them. And this is the mill neighborhood type of area that I would grow up around. So to this day, I've made a go of making art without having to answer to people that really is none of their business what I do. So at this time, around that time, I came up with the idea, Artomat. You see, it was going to be an assemblage that looks like a vending machine. Basically, the idea was based on a friend of mine who had a Pavlovian reaction to snack wrappers. So when he'd hear the crinkle of cellophane, he would open up something, go buy something. So I wanted to kind of document that. And when I moved to Winston-Salem, this was when cigarette machines were being banned, and just so kids couldn't buy from the machines. So I'm not going to go too deep into Artomat. There's a lot of moving parts, and if you're an artist, I think I'm going to be hanging out around lunch. We can talk about that. But I'm just going to go into the way that Artomat kind of became its own little micro community I had no clue that it would do that. So I got my machine, ripped it apart in my basement, and there it is. It was one of 13 pieces in an art show. 20 years later, it's the same thing. You go to a venue and you buy a token or put in a $5 bill, and you walk away with a small piece of art that is the size of a pack of smokes. During that first show in June of '97, the owner of the coffee shop, she had a regular who was a police officer, and he wanted to see what I was doing. And I had all those pieces with dog fur and dirt and junk, and then the Artomat was off in the corner. And I would also use Polaroid pictures in my larger paintings. And the pictures that I didn't use, I chopped up and put on blocks of wood to sell for $1 each in the machine. And he was very patient, and he was very country. And when we broke, like he when we were done talking, he said, "Your art is right smart." And I'm like, okay, that was something that meant a lot to me, because if you're from the South, if you've ever been around, I don't know if this term is anywhere else, but it's more like something that your mean uncle would say when you're baling hay. He would, he'd bust on you if you weren't working hard enough, but if you won his approval, he'd call you a smart worker. So that type of dialogue is something that's not ever used in the art world. Like, art critics don't say that Picasso is right smart, So it kind of made me realize, okay, something happened here. And then the owner of the coffee shop wanted the machine to stay, so we just left it there, and she invited me to local artists. I was new to town. And then it just stayed in Winston-Salem for a while, and then as time went on, more venues started requesting. What I noticed is people were drawn to the idea of the swords and the plowshares, but also I think people just like the interaction, and it's more personal than I would have expected coming from a big old machine that was going to be scrapped. And also, younger people who were, the reason they were banned, were now buying from our machines, but they're buying art. So, and we were introducing kids to this who may have never bought art before. A lot of adults have never bought art before back then. One time I heard a kid say, "Hey, look, Daddy, there's that machine with rings in it." So they already had a different idea of what was happening with these machines. They didn't have all the history, but most people knew what they were used for. And now we have 130 machines around the country and a few out of the country, in Canada, Vienna. This was in coastal part of Virginia. What I want to do is just share this with the world and have our machines in places where they'll be appreciated. This was at Miss Magoo's House of Style, and she was the only one there, and one client at a time, so only 2 people were seeing the machine at a time. And in other places, like in Vegas, we have thousands of people walking by machines every day. So, and this one's designed to move around into communities in Brooklyn. And what I've noticed is people were, they enjoyed Artemat because I think they've been alienated by the idea of museums and the elitism of commercial galleries. So the fact that they could engage in something, I think people would really appreciate it. And this is another way that you can connect with people. This is Skinny Pete from Breaking Bad, who one of our artists did a portrait of him, and he found it on Instagram and asked the artist if he could buy it. So we put it in a gift stocking for him and mailed it out. So what I've noticed is artists, they bring to this project something that means a lot to them, and that's what makes it, that's why we're here, that's why we're still here. And I think that's why we're always recreating our approach and bringing excitement. This artist, she was one of our younger ones at the time. She would donate all of her money to a group that would help try to prevent child slavery in Africa. This is an email that our artist from Japan received, where this person from Israel was traveling to Chicago and bought from the Artemat and then took it home and emailed her. So her piece of art literally traveled around the world. It came to our studio, went to Chicago, got taken back to Israel, and then emailed back to Japan. So, and she would do bead rings. She'd knit little bead rings. And 2 couples have been engaged with machine rings from the Artemat. So it's like the whole idea to get that ring in a gumball machine, it kind of applies, but they're still married as far as I know. And one thing I noticed early on is like these old, ugly, heavy, smelly machines, we try to clean them up the best we can. It brings life to something that maybe was just trash can or plant, and this is at an Italian restaurant in my town, and everyone just loves it. They'll go to dinner and get a piece of art. I had some, that was an old image. So I plan on doing this the rest of my days. I'm gonna keep kind of chugging along. So I never expected to be doing this for a living, and I'm grateful. I wanna treat every artist that chooses to be a part of what we do with respect, and just kind of, the previous thing is kind of like, I just want to sit in the back of the bus. I find that to be kind of cooler anyway, but I'd rather for the artists to really do what they do and make this project better. So, and I think that's it. Minute over.